tutorial I'm going to show you how to sew on Peckish's comb and her beak, and also embroider her eyes. So to stitch Peckish's comb on, what you're going to do is just pin it onto the top of her head, lining up with her the seam on the back, and try and get this middle segment in the middle of her head. I've just pinned mine in place with a spare needle. I'm going to take that off now that I'm happy with the position of her comb. I've got my needle threaded with the yarn tail that we left on there after sewing the comb up, and you're just going to stitch in as close as you can to try and get the stitching to be under where the comb's going to end up sitting. So just stitch along one side of the comb first, and then when you're finished we'll turn her over to the other side and stitch down the other side of her comb. It's important that you stop and check the position of the comb as you go along, just to make sure that it's going in the place you want it to, because it can move around a bit while you're working on it. That's that side of her comb done. I'm going to move over to the other side now, so just take the yarn in through the other side where you won't be able to see it. You just need to stitch it down until you're happy with it. You can see the little knot that I did when I was finishing off her comb, which you can find in the other video tutorial, has come undone while I've been stitching this. That's not a problem, because that isn't going to unravel, so just leave that there and we'll come back and we'll snip that off at the end of. Once you're happy with how her comb looks, you can take this yarn and just put it down in under her comb and pull it through a long way down her body. Pull it nice and tight, and then we're going to snip this off, and that holds it securely. You can get the end of your needle and just poke the little bit of yarn back in if it's sticking out. So I'm just going to snip this part off where the knot came undone. You can use the end of your darning needle to just sort of poke in any parts that you're not happy with until you get it to look exactly the way you want to. There's her comb. Now we'll do her beak. So to sew Peckish's beak on, you're going to line it up with her comb, and you can use the measurements in the pattern as a guide, or you can just kind of put it where you're happy with it. If you're not sure if it's a good position or not, just get a pin and pin it in place and then have a look at it. Once you're happy with the position, it's time to sew it on. So holding her beak in place with your finger, you're just going to thread the yarn through these stitches at the front and up through her beak. Once you're happy with how secure it is, it's done. It's just a matter of finding out what works for each knitted piece, because they're all a little bit different, and doing whatever you need to make it look how you're happy with. I'm happy with how that's looking, and it's nice and secure. So I've brought my yarn out the front here, and I'm just going to snip it off. And then again get the end of my darning needle to poke this little bit of yarn into the inside of Peckish. And that's her beak and her comb done. The last thing to do is embroider her eyes. So to embroider the eyes on Peckish, they're all very individual. As you can see, these two are they just look like they've got different personalities. And you sort of need to work with whatever works for the individual toy. With the eyes, I often have to embroider mine a couple of times to get them to look right, so don't be worried if you have to unpick them a few times. To get started, I've got my darning needle threaded with a 4-ply black wool. This is Woolganic. I find it works really well for eyes. And to get up here where you want the eyes to be, you're going to choose where you want your first eye to be, and you're going to, a fair way away from that, put your needle in and thread it all the way up there. This gives you a nice secure eye without you trying to hide a knot anyway. So pull it up until the end of your yarn has just disappeared inside the chicken. That gives you a nice tail on the inside to keep things nice and secure. So to do her eye for the first stitch, you can get the yarn and you can sort of hold it up a little bit to give you a little bit of an idea of where you want to go. Like I said earlier, sometimes I have to embroider my eyes a few times, so don't stress out if you have to unpick them and redo them. So that's the first bit of her eye, which is looking alright. Sometimes it doesn't and you have to pull that out straight away. So to do another bit, I'm going to go in that same place again and pull the yarn through. So more of her eye has formed now, so I'm going to go just near the same spot again, but not exactly where I just went in. And this time as I pull the yarn through, I'm going to hold it over to the left a little rather than, so it ends up sitting in a slightly different spot than the last one. And that's her first eye. If you want to imagine how it looks, just cover up the end of your yarn with your finger, and once you're happy with her eye, you're going to go put the needle through very close to where the yarn is coming out. And this is the harder bit, doing the second eye. Turn around to the front and try and line up the needle to come through to where you want the second eye to be positioned. When you're pulling a yarn through, we're not pulling on it really firmly, we're just pulling it through so that we're not dinting the eyes in and so that the stitches maintain a nice sort of plump look. You can see there's that little bit of yarn showing on her where we pulled it through. Just get your needle and sort of poke it around a bit. Embroidering the second eye is always a bit trickier than the first one because you're trying to make this eye look friendly as well, but also get it to be the same size, shape and in line with the first eye. So when you're embroidering the second eye, you're going to work on the side like we did for the first one, but you're also going to keep turning Peckish and checking that the eye's looking like the first one you did. So choose where you want to put her second eye and start making some small stitches under the knitting, just like we did for the first one. I'm going to do a third and final one on this eye, just like I did on the first one, but because I'm also going to want to get rid of my yarn tail on this one, I'm going to put the needle where I want the third bit of eye to go, but I'm going to put it down rather than we've sort of been going for shallow sort of movement under the knitting. This one's going to go down and out the back of her. And that hasn't come out in the position that I really wanted it to, so I'm just going to unpick that stitch. And then I'm going to unpick the one before it, because when you make a stitch you're sort of setting up for the next stitch at the same time. So I'm back to the first stitch that I did. And then I'm going to do the third one again. I'm happy with that eye this time. They're both nicely in line at the front. So I'm going to cut my yarn off. Get the end of my needle and poke it back through. And then to finish off your eyes, you can get the end of your needle and also just put it in under the knitting and just sort of give them a lift so that they're not dimpled in. And then that's Peckish finished.